when we talk about money management is the percentage at risk. Now, at the end of this webinar, I'd like to look at some of the charts so you can see some of the live trades that are available to us. But right now, what I want to do is talk about this idea of money management and trading psychology and how the two are related. Okay? Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that when we're talking about trading, our psychology directs more than we admit, for most of us, myself included. Most of us are not willing to admit how much psychology plays in our trading. Erwin says he bought the Naked Forex book. Brilliant. I hope you find it useful, Erwin. That's great. We often talk about some Naked Forex trading systems here at this webinar, but today we're going to concentrate on money management and why that's important. I fully expected that today we would see fewer traders here today than we normally do, simply because it's not such a sexy topic, money management. However, it is usually sort of the last piece for most traders to come into place. So if we look at traders and we talk about what is the normal progression for most traders, the first thing that we notice is trading systems. And that's the focus. The idea is that if we get the very best trading system, then everything's going to be fine. So our focus is on the trading system, and primarily on entries, right? Where do we get in a trade? How do we know when to take a trade? The second thing that comes in for most traders is exits, and that's this idea that how to take profit. Where is the most profit going to be made? And if you're not interested in trailing exits, that's usually where it starts to come in on that second stage. The third stage gets into money management. And the fourth and final stage for most traders is trading psychology. And there are very good reasons why 3 and 4 are last, and why 4 really follows 3. And the fifth stage really is related to the fourth stage, as is third stage related to the fourth stage, but it's really about self-improvement. And this is where, if anyone's really serious about trading, they get into some sort of routine here that feeds back into their trading psychology, right? And so that's sort of the normal progression for most traders. I'm not saying that just because you're focusing on exits doesn't mean you're not going to be interested in trading psychology. All I'm saying is that this is the typical progression that I've seen in many, many dozens and dozens of traders. This is usually what happens. They usually first get interested in where do I take a trade, then get interested in how do I maximize my profit on these trades that I'm taking, then how do I maximize the profit that my account is making on these trades, and that's money management. Then, how do I, get my emotions right so I'm able to follow my rules? And finally, what can I do every day to keep me in the zone, in the trading zone, so that I'm following my rules, I'm happy, I'm confident, and all of that. So that's really what it comes down to. Are there any questions about that? About what I'm talking about here? Okay, so today what we're going to be focusing in is the 3, and to some degree number 4 as well. So that's really where we're going to be today. We're going to be at 3 and 4. Now, let's talk about what it means to be. You can see my spreadsheet here? Everyone wants to see my spreadsheet? Sweet, Ian, thanks. Thanks, Pan. Thank you, Maud. Okay, so what I want to talk about here is, does anybody have the numbers for their trading system? Now, you may be trading live. You may actually have, maybe you're not trading live. Maybe you've back tested in Forex Tester or something like that. Ian has been trying out the 2E system. Okay, does anybody have your numbers, like your win rate for a trading system that you're using? Do you know what your win rate is on the 2E, Ian? 58%. Brilliant. Okay. There, we'll plug in Ian's numbers. So Ian's been trading the 2E system, and this is a 58% win rate that Ian has. And so if Ian is taking a 2% at risk on each trade, now let's talk a little bit about this. If a trader is trading 2% risk, right, then then that's a start, right? Because what some traders do is they'll say, I'm just going to take 2 lots on every trade. So if I trade the euro pound, I take 2 lots, or if I trade the euro yen, I take 2 lots. Well, the problem with that, of course, is that even if I have the exact same stop loss, let's say I use a 50 pip stop loss on my euro pound and a 50 pip stop loss on my euro yen, the price per pip is different on both of those trades, and so what that means is I'm not risking the same percentage. So some trades are weighted more heavily than others. In this case, the euro pound would be weighted more heavily than the euro yen. Now, what that means is that I have more risk on the euro pound trade than I have on the euro yen. Regardless of what happens with the trade, I have more risk on that one than the other. So the way to do this, of course, is to calculate out your risk precisely, and that's not really what we're going to talk about today, but it is important to note that many traders simply use something across the board, like a 2 lots on every trade, or 5 lots on every trade, or a 60 pip stop loss on every trade, and that's fine, and you can do that if you use the pips. You know, if you say I'm going to use 20 pips on every trade, I'm going to use a 25 pip stop or a 95 pip stop, whatever it is, that's fine, but you have to adjust your lot sizes so that your risk is exactly the same. Now, if instead you use the same number of lots, then what's going to happen is you're not going to have the same amount at risk, because currency pairs vary in the price per pip. So some pairs cost more per pip fluctuation, and others, of course, cost less. So in this case, if Ian is risking 2% on each of his trades, we know, given this calculator, and by the way, if you guys want this, I'll send it to you happily. Just email me, walter@fxjake.com, and I'll send you this calculator, and you can get this risk of ruin calculator and get it for yourself and play around with it. There's another page that we're going to talk about in a minute right now, but for right now, the important thing to note is if you know what your win rate is and you know how much you want to risk on each trade, you will know what your risk of ruin is, okay? And the risk of ruin is less than 1% for Ian if you're taking 2% risk on every trade, given your 58% win rate. So what this says is that my risk. Now, what happens if I bump this up to 5% at risk? What's going to happen to the risk of ruin here? Does everyone know what the risk of ruin is? The risk of ruin is essentially this idea that there's going to be a catastrophic loss in the account, and the account is going to be drained to basically to nothing. So a 97% loss of the account would be a risk of ruin, right? Essentially, you're going to run out of money. That's the risk of ruin. Pan on Fire says it's going to go up when we go to 5%. You're right. It's still less than 1%, and we're not seeing the number here. But if we move up to 10%, we actually have a 4% risk of ruin, don't we? So if Ian is risking 10% on every trade, he has essentially a 4 out of 100 chance of ruining his account and blowing it up. Obviously, if you go to 20%, now we've doubled from 10% to 20, but the risk of ruin didn't go from 4% to 8. I want you to notice that. It actually went to almost 20%. So we have basically a 1 in 5 chance of blowing up the account.